Ladies and gentlemen, we are back with Transformers and we are entering a new volume. And this one, we go into the past. So this picks up on the current events, well, sort of. And the reason why I say that is because the way this issue is showed, we go into the past and we also go into the past of when Soundwave took command, which was back in issue 7. But we see all that again of Soundwave destroying Starscream and telling him that he kicked his Ravage and that the only path left is extermination. And we see Starscream fall off the cliff like we did in issue 7, but of course with a different perspective and a new lick of paint, which I gotta say I really do like Jason Howard's art style here. But we see Starscream laying here basically bleeding out and we hear him say Starscream is his name, and we instantly shift back into Cybertron, which we see someone calling him out by the name of Ulchtar or Ilchtar. Probably gonna butcher that a couple times, but yeah, we are back on Cybertron though, and the art here looks amazing, man. But we see Starscream and Jetfire, and I also believe Skybound's first ever new character for the Transformers series, and his name is Genvo, which is really dope. And we see that Genvo, Ulchtar, aka Starscream, and Jetfire are going off together for a kind of a last oorah as friends, because this is Jetfire's last night on Cybertron, so they want to go off with a bang, which is really wholesome. And we see them go on their way to Moonbase 2 because it will have the best viewing of what they are going to go do. And it's really cool to see Moonbase 2 here, but we see on the next page here that they are talking about the war. Now, real quick, if anyone doesn't know, and I'm pulling this from the G1 cartoon because that's what this story seems to be heavily based on, but back then, before the war on Cybertron was ramping up, Starscream and Jetfire were scientists and weren't really fighters, and that's exactly the case here, as we see Starscream say that he hasn't really heard much about the fighting and that him and his brothers are refusing to join his side. And we see Genvo offer Jetfire and Starscream to go join the Decepticons, as the leader of the Decepticons is unlike anyone who has met him, and that they would make an incredible team together. But we see Jetfire basically say that he's already made a choice, which is to explore out in space and find a way to save Cybertron. And this right here gives you guys a good estimate of how long Jetfire has been gone, because right here the war is kind of just starting, and he goes off and leaves and then crashes on the rock, which then starts Void Rivals, which then we see him come back on Transformers issue 1. So he's been gone for a while, and the poor dude doesn't know what happens with the war. But we see this interesting part of the page as Genvo starts to stomp down on these little robotic insects, and we see Starscream grab his arm before stomping anymore and tells him to stop, and that everyone thinks they bite, but they are actually quite harmless, as they help clean the gears of our moons, and goes on to say they are beautiful. And it's kind of weird, man, seeing Starscream act peaceful. But we see Genvo and Starscream point as they say they are here, which then we see Omega Supreme. At least that's who I think it is, and the reason why I say that is because Omega had a different color scheme to other Guardian robots back in the G1 cartoon, so for all we know this could be someone else, but I'm just gonna say it's Omega Supreme. But we see Omega Supreme fly around, you know, the Moonbase 2 and Cybertron, and we see Starscream and the other two marvel at how big the Guardian robots are, which then we see Starscream come up with a plan to get a better look. And I love this next page here because we see Starscream run through this sign, and we see Cup asleep at the job as like a parking attendant for like the munitions area, and you just see him wake up like, what's going on? It's amazing. It's definitely a homage to the 86 movie when we see like Hot Rod run through the sign and, you know, Cup being Cup. But we see Starscream tell Jetfire and Genvo that the Cybertron Defense Force stockpile ammunition is here, and wow, what a mouthful. But we see Starscream has a plan to make the Guardian robots see them, and what other better way to catch the eyes of a Guardian robot the size of a planet? Why not commit arson? As with a big explosion Starscream makes, it catches the eyes of Omega Supreme, and they all wave at him, and Omega Supreme waves back. Honestly, very, very wholesome to see. But as they are celebrating, the old timer himself, Cup, catches up to the three troublemakers. But here's the thing, the three of them can fly, and Cup can't. So they all laugh and fly away, which then we see Cup being Cup, call them dumb techno pups, which is very spot on for the character. But we see the next page that it's time to say their final goodbyes, as Jetfire can't stay another night and must find a way to prevent Cybertron's demise. And with a final group hug, Jetfire goes off into space, saying goodbye. But as Starscream says he's going to miss him, Genvo tells Starscream that he has not to worry, as he still has him. And we see on the next page, as time has gone by, and loud explosions go off everywhere as we see Shockwave, Genvo, and freaking Overcharge, which is amazing, man. But we see Starscream come out of this building in a panic as he sees his friend waging in a war, and with a huge blast coming through, it hits Starscream, knocking him back as Genvo stops shooting to go and help Starscream and help him get up. We see Starscream witness that what war can do, and more specifically, what war can do when it's in your own backyard. As Starscream's laboratory gets completely destroyed, all of his work as a scientist gets destroyed. And we see Genvo helping Starscream evacuate the area, saying that they came out of nowhere and they're right on our tails, which then we see in the next page, our boy Genvo gets shot right in the chest, leaving a hole in his body. We see Genvo bleeding out in Starscream's arms, telling his old friend Ulchtar that he did it, that he yelled at the gods, and that you screamed the stars into seeing us. And with a smile on his face, Genvo goes offline for good. As Ulchtar screams for Genvo's name, we see him look to his side, and it's Optimus Prime, who shows up on the scene, the heroic leader. I say with a question mark because in Starscream's eyes, Optimus is no hero, as look what war has caused in his own home. Also, what's really cool here is we see Bumblebee in the back, and I also believe that's Grimlock, which is awesome. At least that's what I'm rolling with. It kind of looks like Grimlock, so. But it's cool to see their Cybertronian designs. And shifting back into the present, Starscream going into complete shock, meeting his end, screams out for Genvo, but nothing's there, as all that's there is lava, and as Starscream is no longer on Cybertron, he's on Earth, and everything he just witnessed again was all but a terrible memory in the past, back before the war waged on into what it is now. And we see Starscream kind of like get knocked out here. I don't want to say he's fully dead here because it's Starscream, man. Like this dude, like you'd have to like destroy like every atom in his body for him to be really dead. Like this dude always finds a way to come back to life. But we see a group of people here saying quickly now, and someone asking, what is this thing? And then the person responds with something big, which then we see in the next page. I think these are Cobra dudes because, and I asked this question to anyone in the comments because I haven't really read any of the G.I. Joe side of things for Skybound, but isn't that a Hiss tank? Like, I don't know. It looks like a Hiss tank, so I really don't know. It could be G.I. Joes or Cobra. I don't know, but I'm just going to say Cobra. It's a group of Cobra guys. But so forgive me if I get this wrong, but we see them trying to tow Starscream away, and we see this part where this guy's sketching Starscream's face on a notepad, which then we see him being told to get his head in the game, and are trying to load Starscream up on the tank, which we see he's just too heavy. Even with him missing his limbs, he's just too heavy for the tank to tow, which then we see Starscream drop back on the floor. And we see this guy kind of have a meltdown here, basically saying, my father was a legend and was celebrated for even in death, and what do I get? A unit that can't even get this thing to be salvaged. And we see him say this is an embarrassment and that he should be at the top, and all that changes now. And this whole scene really draws parallels to how Starscream is and how he acts and how he's always wanted to take leadership. But we shift back to the moment when Genvo died, and we see Starscream carry him, which then he trips and drops Genvo's corpse, which then we see Ulchtar ask himself, what am I going to do now? Which then we see the big baddie himself, Megatron, walk in, telling him you can join us, you can avenge your friend and your clan, and that you can be the warrior of the Decepticon Order, which then we see Megatron transform into a gun. And also here, his gun mode looks a lot like a tank, so I wonder if this makes Megatron a triple changer or not, but anyways, we see Megatron ask him, tell me, young one, what did your brothers call you? And we see Ulchtar say, my name is Starscream, and his eyes turn red, and he is now a Decepticon. But this picks up with the current events of the aftermath of the finale of Volume 2, and we see these Cobra guys, which we saw last issue, and we see them all working, and we have one person sketching and the other making repairs to the Hiss tank we saw last issue, which then we see Clayton, who is one of the Mars guys, says this is an abomination, which then we see Horan say stop your complaining. As we see in the next page, they have attached Starscream to the Hiss tank. I repeat, they attached Starscream to a Hiss tank, which looks insane. Like they made bro a full-on gun tank, which is it's insane. Anyways, we see Horan ask if the Hiss tank failsafe is installed, which we see Clayton say yes it is, and we see Starscream see what they are talking about and just starts to freak out, asking them what have they done to him and telling them they have ruined his beautiful body. Which before Starscream starts to stomp on these Cobra guys, we see one of the Mars guys show Starscream a sketch of Starscream, telling him that they saved him and his legs were gone when they found him by the lava, which of course, Starscream being Starscream, tells them that sketch is all wrong and all of his proportions are completely off and to draw him again, which is just very on brand for the character. But we see that the remote they have lets Starscream move around, and he can also move around on his own, but mainly needs this remote control device. And we see this Mars group move him around with the device, and when Starscream is chasing them, he has a Optimus Prime deer moment, well, sort of, because he stops and sees a cat and says, what is that? And then goes on to say, I must kill it. which again is very on brand for the character. But we see Raz come in and save her cat, but Raz's cat ends up biting Raz, which then Starscream starts to laugh and say, "I like this cat." And because of this whole action here, Starscream has calmed down a bit, telling Raz that he needs Energon, which then we see Horin tell Starscream that they're happy to help and get what Starscream needs, which then we see on the next page Starscream grabbing and telling Horin that he needs no one's help, which then Horin tells him to act more careful if he was him because they have rigged explosives to Starscream and the Hiss tank, which then we see these two are at an impasse, and Starscream tells him, "Well played," which then we see these two discuss what they both want. As for Horin, he basically wants power and to be in charge, and tells Starscream that if his superiors at Mars would be very happy to see a weapon of his size and cunning, and that they could do great things together, which then Starscream tells Horin that how fortunate it is to see someone else who shares a similar goal, and says to himself he has been looking for the right fleshling to partner with, and that's exactly what we see, as for the time being they have made some type of truce and are willing to work together. But they hear some type of screaming by them, which then they go and check it out, but we get hit with another flashback of Starscream's time on Cybertron. And this whole sequence here is crazy, like I'm not gonna lie to you, but we see Megatron and Starscream blasting at Autobots, and we see Megatron talking to the imprisoned Autobots and tells them, "I must give you Autobots credit, you are valiant warriors, one that I can use in the war to save our home if you vow to take up the Decepticon cause. I will have mercy on you, you will turn from my enemy into my kin. What say you?" Which then we see the imprisoned Autobots say no to the tyrant leader, which then Megatron forces Starscream's hand here as Megatron transforms into his gun mode and tells Starscream to take him and do what must be done, which then Starscream says he can't and that they are prisoners of war, which then Megatron tells him that he knows the limits of his power and that someone must wield them, and that someone is Starscream. And we see in the next page that Starscream is having trouble with the ideals of a Decepticon, but Megatron tells him to do this and that it's better this way, and tells Starscream, "What you desire matters not, and you are mine now," and tells him to obey his command, which Starscream does and shoots one of the imprisoned Autobots, completely destroying him, which we see the other imprisoned Autobots start to freak out, and with a scared look, Starscream tells the Autobots he is sorry, but Megatron reassures him, telling him to not apologize for what is necessary from now on. And we see this really cool looking panel of Starscream's descent into becoming a full-on Decepticon. As at first, he hated what he did, but over time he enjoyed it, and Megatron tells him, "You shall be my executioner, you shall be my hand of death, and together we will bring Cybertron back to its rightful and glorious place among the stars," which is just nuts, man. And does anyone else get the feeling that this Megatron is acting very similar to the Fall of Cybertron, War for Cybertron Megatron, which is just freaking cool if that's true, if they're taking inspiration from that. Anyways, we go back to the present and we find out that it's actually Astrotrain who was yelling. And we have this reunion of sorts with Starscream and Astrotrain. And when Starscream asks Astrotrain how he was set free from the Nemesis bridge, he tells him it was Soundwave who did it, which leaves Starscream a look of disgust, but still sets Astrotrain free from the chains. And Astrotrain tells Starscream that Soundwave promised him Megatron for joining his plan, which Starscream tells Astrotrain that it's all lies of what Soundwave told him. And Starscream, being his cunning self, tells Astrotrain that Soundwave lies with every sentence he spills from his faceplate, and tells Astrotrain that if he doubts what he is saying, look at what Soundwave did to him. And he continues to say to Astrotrain to join his side and let him have his true revenge, which of course Astrotrain agrees. And we see a huge part of Cybertron at the beach they are at, which of course is from the finale of Volume 2, and we see Astrotrain tell Starscream that much has happened and ask Starscream why he has partnered with the humans, which then we see them on the next page trying to escape from a huge tidal wave that's coming, and telling Starscream to leave the Mars group to the waters, but Horin overhears this and uses the remote control to bring Starscream back, which then we see Starscream yell at Horin to get him on that ship now, and that since this group saved Starscream, Starscream will return the favor and save them, which if you know Starscream, you know it's never the same thing. But we see on the next page as they are escaping, Horin tells him to remember who's in charge, which then Starscream says and tells Horin he would never try to dare and do some type of funny business. But as they're moving out of the huge tidal wave that's incoming, they see Onslaught and Brawl who were left behind, and they end up rescuing these two Combaticons, which makes sense because we didn't see them at all in the finale of Volume 2. Which when Horin starts to ask what's going on and who are these two Decepticons that join them on the shuttle, Starscream asks Horin if the legend of the Combaticons never reached the hills of Earth, as they are best known for their passion and violence. And Horin tells Starscream that he never agreed to this and demands that him and his Mars group will be taken back to the surface, which we see Starscream with a smirk on his face tell Horton of course, and that they just need to make a quick pit stop, and with a wave of water hitting the shuttle, the Mars group flies around in the shuttle, dropping the device and Horton being knocked out. And after some time passes and being knocked out, Horton gets up and all he can hear is "All hail Starscream," and we see Starscream with Astrotrain and the remaining Combaticons, which is just amazing, dude. And this issue seems to remind me a lot of Starscream's Brigade from the G1 cartoon, which is just awesome that they are doing this type of plot point in this volume. But we see on the next page, as Horton is looking for the remote control device, Starscream tells the Combaticons that they need to focus on an evil that is growing in their ranks, and Soundwave must be stopped, which then we see Onslaught and Brawl bring up how he doesn't need to say any more, and goes to tell Starscream that Soundwave is a traitor, in which we see Horton interrupt this conversation, which Starscream tells Horton that it's best for this working relationship to be done and that they should part ways. And Horton tells Starscream that he's got a failsafe right here with the remote device, which then Starscream goes and says, "Go ahead and press the button," which Horton does, and we see that it isn't working, and Raz says sorry to the general as Starscream promised to let them go if they pulled out the charges. And Horton, with a look of betrayal, we see Starscream immediately squash, just squish Private Raz, telling her thank you for the help. And with Horton and Clayton running, immediately Clayton is taken out by Starscream's null ray. And with Horton begging for his life, Starscream gets the remote control and tells Horton that "you tried to make me a slave, which is unforgivable," and kills Horton right there, runs him over, and tells Private Martin to start sketching, and tells him that he will be the illustrator and witness to his great rise of power. And that's exactly what we see as he starts to sketch the treacherous Seeker, and we see Starscream tell Soundwave to prepare for himself, as the Earth will belong to him. And this picks up with the Decepticons at Tacoma, Washington, and we have the Decepticons causing havoc, but with a reason, as we see Thundercracker bring up how this is wrong with what they are doing. But we see Soundwave say he does not enjoy it, but they have no choice, as they once again are on their back foot, and that failure after failure, loss after loss, they have no choice. And Thundercracker brings up how Cybertron isn't gone, and parts of it fell into the ocean, and they should go and find other Decepticons to join them, which Soundwave disagrees and says Earth is a place of treasure, rich with energy and raw materials, unlike Cybertron, and that the Autobots have one major weakness, which is they care for the humans on this planet and will always protect the weak. And Soundwave tells Thundercracker to get this unpleasant work over with, and we see Thundercracker not happy with what he does and tells these group of people to hurry and run as we see him blow up the building, which is just crazy, man, because we are just getting closer and closer to that whole hopefully defecting from the Decepticons from Thundercracker, and I'm all here for it. But in the next page here, we have our good buddy old pal Cliffjumper, which yes, he isn't dead, which is amazing, but we see him wake up on Cybertron and mention that explosion that him and Optimus took, he must have got knocked back into Cybertron. And we see him get greeted by Warpath and Bluestreak, which is awesome. I'm glad Warpath survived, and we also see Bluestreak, which is awesome, and we also get to see Blur. And this reunion is a little short-lived because they are being hunted, and let me just say that Bluestreak does confirm that Cup and the others in Alita's group are dead, so Warpath was the only remaining survivor, which sucks because Cup was really cool in the one page we saw him in, and for Huffer, well, you guys know how I feel at this point about him. Anyways, in the next page, we shift to the Autobots on Earth, and we have a goodbye here with RC as she blames herself for the way things ended back in issue 11 and 12, with her letting rage and vengeance get to her, which led to Shockwave taking Cliffjumper and all that jazz that happened in issue 12. But we see her say goodbye to Optimus, and we have a really nice wholesome moment of Optimus telling her that he is proud of her no matter what. And we see on the next page that RC isn't alone, as Beachcomber, Spike, and Carly will be joining RC on her departure. And to people wondering what they are going to go do, they're basically going to go track down Ultra Magnus and bring him back to the Ark and all that, because I believe for the description for issue 17, it says a group of Autobots are going to track down Magnus, so it's cool that my city commander will eventually be making a return. Also, this just lets existing characters take a back seat, while this volume introduces new characters. But we see Beachcomber and Optimus exchange their goodbyes as Wheeljack tells Optimus that they are getting radio chatter, as on the next page they are on their way. And we finally get some more info on what's been happening with Optimus, as Wheeljack tells Optimus he did some scans on his neural net and couldn't find anything that could be contributing to the visions he has mentioned and we have seen in the story so far. And Optimus brings up how it could be the Matrix doing all this, which Wheeljack says he doesn't know how the Matrix is causing all this because it has nothing powering it due to Optimus using all of it after he repaired himself and after Sparky sacrifice himself, which Optimus says he did and nothing is powering it, which leaves Wheeljack asking if an organic has ever interfaced with it before, which leaves Optimus saying no, he doesn't believe so, which has Wheeljack theorizing that that was Sparky messing with the Matrix is also messing with Optimus's neural net, which is why we see him have those strange visions. So basically what this all means is this is all coming from the Matrix and Sparky's sacrifice. So basically my Megatron theory is dead, which sucks. I was really hoping it was the Megatron theory, but it's fine. I'll take my L on that one. But on the next page, we see the Autobots arrive at the damaged area that the Decepticons made back in the first page of this issue, and we see Optimus and Jazz and Wheeljack go and help the humans out, which we see humans throwing rocks and shooting at Optimus. As in the humans' eyes, they can't tell the difference between the Autobots or the Decepticons, at least not yet, and we see Optimus confused, asking why are they attacking them, which we see Optimus tank a huge shot in the back from a tank, and we see Optimus start to snap again, asking why are they doing this, and that they are trying to help, which leaves Optimus completely in his, I guess you can dub this as his berserker rage, as he charges ahead at the tank that shot him, yelling, is hurting things all you're able to do, which we see this metal looking page of Optimus destroying the tank, but thankfully Jazz is able to pull our commander back into reality, and Wheeljack brings up how more human military is inbound, which Optimus tells them to roll out and back away, which we see from miles away, the Decepticons were spying on them, knowing the Autobots would go and help out, which we see Scrapper tell Soundwave that they should go and attack the Autobots. But Soundwave tells Scrapper no, as right now they only need to wait and watch, as with the numbers being so few, and that they plan to ambush and strike the Autobots at their heart, which we see Soundwave tell Laserbeak that yet again, they must wait for Ravage's repairs, and tells Laserbeak to go and do what he wanted to do once they awoke on this planet, and do not return until the task is complete, which we cut back to Cybertron, and we see Bluestreak's group stop as they see Ramjet, and we see Bluestreak pull out this awesome looking knife that reminds me a lot of like the Baver swords we saw in those movies, but he just completely takes out Ramjet from the behind, and in complete silence, some Assassin's Creed type stuff here. It's really freaking dope. And we have Cliff looking sympathetic for the shanked Conehead, and we see Cliff tell Bluestreak that he's changed, which Bluestreak says things got messy after he left, and asks Cliff, since when did you get all mushy over a Decepticon? Which Bluestreak says, let me guess, Optimus, which Cliff Jumper replies that he has taught him a different way, which we see Alita 1 say, and when was the last time he truly had to survive? So yes, our questions are finally being answered after the conclusion of Volume 2, which was, is Alita and Cliff, are they alive, are they dead, and do the Autobots hate Optimus Prime, you know, the group of Autobots on Cybertron? And yes, they are alive, and honestly, it's looking that way, that the Autobots on Cybertron do not like Optimus Prime. And I think that's just because of like Alita 1's influence, as with her just being in charge of the Autobots on Cybertron and her already voicing her opinion on how she feels about Optimus, it kind of makes sense for the Autobots on Cybertron to not really take a liking to him. But I don't think all the Autobots hate Optimus. I think, you know, just probably Alita's group. I think the other Autobots out there, you know, they don't hate our commander. So it really is, though, looking like Autobots versus Autobots and Decepticons versus Decepticons in this volume, which is nuts, man. It's insane. But we cut back to the Autobots as they are now at the dam for repairs, and Wheeljack asks Optimus what happened back there, which Optimus replies with not really knowing how to answer the question, except that he felt like an old version of himself when he was full of anger and vengeance, and that something's not right with him, which Wheeljack replies with that he'll do some more scans once they get back to the Ark, and with RC and Beachcomber being gone, out looking for Magnus, it's time to bring in some reinforcements, which we see the machine starts to start up, and we see Trailbreaker start to come back, and we see Optimus greet Trailbreaker, you know, saying welcome back, just only for a huge ambush attack from Astrotrain, completely blowing up the machine, and probably, yeah, Trailbreaker's probably dead. Rest in peace, Trailbreaker. But we see the Autobots just completely get blitzed as Astrotrain completely blows up the machine they were using for repairs, which leaves the Autobots scrambling, opening fire, and we see Starscream leading his brigade, saying, finally we meet again. And with Optimus being confused, we see Soundwave and his Decepticons arrive on the scene. And Soundwave says, we have hunted the Autobots, but instead found a troublesome insect, which we see Starscream replies with, you will pay for your treachery, Soundwave. And Starscream tells the Combaticons to merge into Bruticus. And with Bruticus facing down Soundwave, that's how this issue ends, fellas. I absolutely cannot wait for issue 16 because, yeah, it's a Decepticon Civil War. And then honestly, we might get an Autobot Civil War now, as the Autobots on Cybertron, maybe all of them, I don't think all of them, but, you know, all of Elita's group, they don't like Optimus, man. They don't like that he took a group of Autobots, went to Earth, left them behind on Cybertron, because I've said this before, Springer and Void Rivals basically confirmed that there was never a real fighting chance with the Autobots in the war. And I don't know if he's saying that like after Optimus Prime left, because we still don't really know what the timeline is for Void Rivals. I like to think that Void Rivals takes a little bit before where we are currently at, but I could be wrong on that, because I know in Void Rivals now they have like people from, you know, Cobra and stuff going, so I don't know how that works. But yeah, the Autobots never had a real fighting chance, and the fact that Optimus took a group of Autobots to leave Cybertron, it kind of makes sense why the Autobots would kind of not like Optimus, for him leaving them behind, and Elita has no choice but to lead that group of Autobots. So yeah, we are getting a full-blown Transformers, you know, Civil War. It's crazy, bro. Cybertronians against Cybertronians, Autobots versus Autobots, Decepticons versus Decepticons. I absolutely cannot wait to see how issue 16 does when we get that, because I think Soundwave's plan for Laserbeak is to go find Megatron. And if that's true, we got some peak stuff coming our way. And it makes sense why Soundwave would have Laserbeak do that, because Soundwave was never really a fan of Starscream's leadership. Like, he made that clear at the beginning of Volume 2. He was not a fan at all. So it makes sense why one of the first things he would want to do is to go look and find Megatron. So I don't know if that theory is true or not, but it would be really cool if we get Megatron in this volume, and hopefully they don't save him for next volume. Maybe they'll like introduce him at the end of this volume. We'll have to see. But yes, a full-on Civil War is coming, and I cannot wait. And I do want to mention that Corona's art in this issue is like the peak. Like, this was his best art yet, which just leaves me wanting more. This picks up on Cybertron with Elita's group, and if you guys remember, Cliff is there with them, but we have Blue Streak telling Elita and Cliff that they shouldn't be here where they are at, and Elita 1 agrees. But Cliffjumper wanted to go and check something out, as this specific area and the area they are at is the same area that killed Cliffjumper's clan, aka his family. And what we learn to find out here is that Cliff had hid away a spark canister of his clan sparks, and that yes, they are pieces of his friends, but not enough to bring any of them back, but maybe enough to make something new. And we will see what he means by that in a little bit, because we shift back to Earth, and boy oh boy, strap in fellas. So we have Soundwave and the whole Decepticon Civil War conflict going on in full effect. And if you are confused on why there's a Civil War going on, there will be a video playlist down in the description below to catch up on the series. But we have Soundwave demanding the Constructicons to turn into Devastator, and we have Devastator versus Bruticus, and this is just amazing. We are going full on Combiner Wars mode, and I love it. While all of this is happening though, the Autobots are in the midst of everything that's literally happening. Like, 2 literal combiners going at it, so they have no choice but to literally jump into water and take to cover, as they are by a literal dam. And we have this amazing page here with Bruticus and Devastator going at it, and Starscream yelling at Bruticus to kill, kill, kill. Which then we see in the next page, we have Starscream confronting Soundwave, with Soundwave asking Starscream how he still functions. Starscream calls Soundwave a fool and says you cannot kill what is unkillable. And I may just be reaching here, but I do wonder if Daniel Warren Johnson is playing around with the plot point that has been done before with Starscream, and that is having a unkillable spark. And if that's the case, that'd be really cool. But anyways, we see Starscream tell Soundwave that he can't say the same for him. And with a look of confusion, we see Astro Train just coming in, all choo-choo, Thomas the Tank Engine, ramming. I can't even finish that line, but it's just so good. We literally see Astro Train just come in, ramming our boy Soundwave, and we have Thundercracker start to go and attack Starscream, asking him why he is doing all of this. And to all of you Thundercracker fans, get ready, as Starscream asked Thundercracker he was there and why he decided to leave Starscream to Soundwave's plans. And what Thundercracker's defense was that Starscream was too unhinged to lead, which then leaves Starscream to finally drop the truth bomb, and that is saying that Soundwave isn't any different with him, as it was both of them that tore off Skywarp to pieces for the useful metals. And with a look of shock and rejection, he tells Starscream that he is lying, and Starscream again dropping another truth bomb for Thundercracker and how Decepticons operate, as he basically tells him to wake up to reality and that this universe is meant only for the strong, and it's spark versus spark and metal on metal. And Starscream getting the upper hand in this fight, getting ready to deal the final blow to Thundercracker. We see Thundercracker sitting there with a remote control device that moves Starscream around, and with Starscream telling Thundercracker to give the device back, he sends Starscream completely off the ledge with the device, throwing him into the water, which then we see in the next page, Astro Train versus Soundwave, as they start to duke it out. And we see Soundwave calling Astro Train a coward for switching sides so easily, which then Astro Train responds, saying that he doesn't care about sides, and all he cares about is who hates Megatron more, and he will side with whoever lets him get the chance to kill him. And before Astro Train hits Soundwave, we see Starscream land on top of him, which then we see Soundwave asking Thundercracker for some backup. We see Thundercracker take off and leave, which is just so freaking good, man. And to everyone from the beginning calling this, there you go, he finally leaves the Decepticons. At least that's what it seems like. And I will be curious to know what Thundercracker will do next. If you have any theories, let me know down in the comments below. But we shift to the Autobots POV of this chaos, and we see Optimus say, enough with this mindless fighting, and if the dam is destroyed, everyone in this area will be devastated. And Starscream mocks Optimus, calling him a baby, and asks him if he really does care about the humans. And we see Optimus start to go into his berserker rage again. And with a even more weird vision in place, we see Jazz trying to snap Optimus out of this, but it's too late. As in the next page, he just lets the fusion cannon rip at the dam, having it completely explode and crumble, sending water and rubble everywhere, flooding the area as it's total anarchy this issue, which is just insane. As we see water and rubble going everywhere, the Autobots are scrambling, and again, Wheeljack asking Optimus what happened. We see our commander once again has no answer to what happened, but our commander does see two kids on their bike racing away from the water, and with the water about to swallow these kids, we see someone appear and say, "What strange little creatures," and boom! Freaking Trailbreaker is alive and well as he saves the kids from the flood. Like, what? This is so good, man. Oh, dude, this issue is just so sweet. And let me just say, thank goodness Trailbreaker is alive. I'll be very glad to say that I was wrong, thinking he was dead. And to all the 4 Trailbreaker believers out there, this is your moment, and what a sweet one it is, as now Team Prime has a new member, and Trailbreaker apologizes to Wheeljack for being late to the party, as when he woke up, all he saw was he was about to get crushed. And Trailbreaker asks what in Primus's name is going on, and why are 2 Decepticon combiners fighting, and with Optimus' answer, it's only just one word: chaos. By the way, I just want to say, we aren't done yet. Like, so I hope you guys are still buckled up, because we are not done yet. But we shift to Cybertron, and we go back to Elita 1 and Cliffjumper and Blue Streak, and they are at this broken down headquarters. And we have Elita 1 explaining that this is the only real headquarters here, since the Decepticons broke into the long-range communications. They have been unaware of other parts of the Resistance on Cybertron. And Elita 1 basically saying that this is all that remains, and that all we really think remains, as there's no communications. But we see Cliffjumper devastated and comments on how he doesn't recognize anybody here, which in Blue Streak tells him that that really isn't surprising, as when him and the other Autobots left with the Ark, these Autobots weren't even made yet. So we do see on this page that our favorite Red Tank Warpath is going to make a recovery, and we have this great panel here of Elita telling Warpath it's not as a good job as it should be, but we do our best. And this whole page just shows that they are so just very dwindled in spirits and numbers, and we see more of that in the next page as Elita asks Cliffjumper what he plans to do with the spark canister, and Cliff responds that he wants to take it to the well of all sparks, which leaves Elita telling Cliff that that will be a walking death sentence, as it's in deep Decepticon territory. And Warpath makes a good point here, saying everywhere at this point is Decepticon territory. And Cliffjumper's reasoning as to why he wants to take the spark canister there is to maybe the combined sparks in the canister can make a new Autobot warrior that could possibly help the Autobots on Cybertron, which Blue Streak agrees with this plan, telling Elita that if they were able to take this place back, it would be a rallying cry to the rest of the Resistance. And it tells Elita that right now, you have no hope in your spark, and I'm not sure any of us do anymore. But maybe, just maybe, a new Autobot could help ignite that fire inside us again. And as to who this Autobot warrior is, or possibly warriors, I think this would be a great chance for Skybound to give us an original Autobot character, but also maybe we could see a combiner team of some sorts. It would be really cool to see like Superion or Defensor.
but I don't really know. But we see Elita 1, from what it seems like, agrees to this plan and asks Cliffjumper if he gets what he wants, will he go back to Earth and back to Optimus? Which Cliff says no, but he wants to go back to Carly. And we shift back to Earth with Carly, RC, Spike, and Beachcomber, as their mission right now is to track down Ultra Magnus. And it seems like they are close to finding him, as they are picking up Energon levels of north of where they are at. Now, before we go into the next page here, fellas, we have a moment that we have all been waiting for. So as we shift to the next page, we see Laserbeak as he embarks on his mission Soundwave gave him last issue. And we see that he's at some kind of desert. Honestly, kind of looks like Arizona, if I'm being honest. But we see him enter a cave, and a voice says, "My old friend, it has been too long." And we see him grab Laserbeak and says, "I must thank you for finding me, wandering this desolate landscape. But thanks to your sacrifice, I can see again." And tells Laserbeak to guide him to his warriors. And boom! Oh my god. I don't know how many times I've said boom this issue, man. Megatron is freaking back. Like, Megatron is back. The tyrannical leader is freaking back. Oh my god, it's so good. It's so good. Oh, and that's how this issue ends, fellas. But we have Megatron back.
Fellas, we are back. How are you, by the way? But we are here with Transformers issue 17. And fellas, we are so back. So this picks up with Thundercracker arriving at the Ark, saying he's coming, as he goes to walk in, calling his brother Skywarp, asking if he's here. And with the next page, we see Thundercracker finding Skywarp in total shock and Skywarp being confused, but ultimately happy to see his brother Thundercracker. And we see Thundercracker start to rip off the wires to Skywarp, as to any of you forgetting, it was Soundwave and Starscream who hooked up Skywarp to Teletran 1 and not the Autobots. But we see Skywarp tell Thundercracker not to pull him out, as it will ultimately lead to death, which Thundercracker, with full determination to set Skywarp free, he says he will find another way to free him from this awful prison. And I want to ask you guys this question: is it possible for Thundercracker to release Skywarp back to the way he was? Because honestly, I don't think it's possible, but I would love to know you guys' thoughts. But we switched the POV to Carly and Spike, as if you guys remember, they are currently with Beachcomber and RC and are on the search for our city commander. But we see Spike asking Beachcomber if this is the right way they are going, which we see Beachcomber say yes, as they found his tracks going into the water and the Energon readings are getting stronger and stronger, which we see this interesting conversation take place between Beachcomber and RC, with RC thanking Beachcomber for coming along and helping her find Ultra Magnus. But Beachcomber admits he's doing this because it's a better trade to him than fighting the Decepticons, which leads to RC asking him what changed him to not want to fight anymore. And Beachcomber simply responds with the day when the Decepticons purged the Ark and attacked the Autobots, which we did see the poor guy get thrown out of, and we do see another flashback here of him talking about more, saying it was total chaos, but through the broken hole he could see stars, galaxies, and life, which led him to have this revelation that the Autobot and Decepticon conflict seems small and meaningless in the grand scheme of things. And by the way, Bumblebee looks hilarious in this little panel here. I'm glad he made a cameo. But Beachcomber goes on to say that he couldn't take part anymore, which then we cut back to the present of him and RC talking, and Beachcomber says fighting only happens when we choose to, which RC responds to, what if there is no choice to fight? What if it's fight or die? But before this gets answered, Carly screams to look out as a huge explosion hits them, sending Carly and Spike into deep water, and we see RC save Spike and Carly, and we see the person that shot them was in fact Ultra Magnus. And we see Ultra Magnus apologizing to RC and Beachcomber as he couldn't see them, and that he lost himself building his fortress, and that he was only trying to keep himself safe. And yeah, we see Ultra Magnus with this really weird makeshift wooden fortress made of wood and trees, and yeah, this dude Shockwave done messed up our city commander pretty bad, man. But we shift to Cybertron with Cliff and Alita's group on Cybertron, and we see Cliff asking if this is going to be too heavy, which we see it's Blades he's talking to. And yes, some more Protectobot love. I love Defensor. And he says, please, I once airlifted Motormaster, and that he'll be ready to drop it once the signal is given, which we see Alita 1 loading her gun and saying to Cliff that his eyes hold a hope she lost a long time ago, and a luxury she has never experienced. And to her, she had one foot in front of the other, one more Decepticon head to sludge, and goes on to say, lose a base, gain a friend, lose a friend.
which Cliffjumper says that's why Optimus had to leave. He had lost all hope. And Elita 1 responds to Cliffjumper with anger, asking, so what? He leaves and that's the solution? Which Cliff responds, saying his plan was to always come back and save Cybertron. And Elita 1 replies saying he had his chance, and now the Autobots and Cybertron are on their own. And yeah, the theory that people have that Elita 1 just outright hates Optimus Prime is just looking more and more true. But we see Bluestreak come in, telling Elita to pull herself together and tells her to look around. As in Bluestreak's eyes, once Optimus came back, for 5 minutes, he has already cut off the head of the Decepticon leadership. With Shockwave gone, they might actually have a chance, and tells Elita that you talk like no one else has lost someone, but the fact of the matter is they all have lost someone and continue to lose more every day. And now they've got a chance at reinforcements. So this is just really cool because we see Bluestreak rallying the squad saying basically, yeah, it's been bad, but with Optimus being back, he's already cut down Shockwave, so the Autobots actually have a fighting chance. And he rallies the troops here of Warpath, Blur, Blades, and Elita to get ready for their mission. And this is just very cool to see someone like Bluestreak to rally the group. But we shift to Team Prime as they are seeing the damage caused by the two combiners, and of course from Optimus as he blew up the dam like we saw in last issue. But we see Wheeljack tell Optimus that Bruticus is moving north towards a large human population, more specifically Seattle. And we see Wheeljack ask Optimus what happened back at the dam, which Optimus says he doesn't really know and that something just came over him. And Wheeljack says if you are in the dark of what's happening, then we should go back to the Ark and make sure you don't lose control. But Optimus, being Optimus, says not when the stakes are so high, and that they should go and help when the humans' lives are at stake. So yeah, it seems like we still aren't getting a clear answer on what's happening to Optimus. I still believe it's a mix of the arm and of course the Matrix, but we switch to the Cybertron group again as we see Thrust, which is actually cool to see another Conehead, and we also see Ratbat, and we see Thrust is complaining about being on guard duty and says that at least venturing out would bring feeling and danger. And yeah, well, here's your danger, Thrust, as Blur literally goes in at super speed and drops a bomb on Thrust's head, and explosions after explosions just happen as we see Elita's group tearing it up, saying they've only got one chance, which we see Bluestreak leading the charge and tells Elita that it's her turn. As we see in the next page, we see Cliff and Elita 1 racing to the well of sparks, and somehow Thrust survived. I don't know how he survived that explosion. I mean, the bomb's literally on the dude's head. Anyways, it's whatever. But we see Thrust and Ratbat enter the fray, chasing Cliff and Elita, and we see Elita tell Cliffjumper to head to the hall and that she will be right behind him. And we see Ratbat calling out to the Autobots and asking to show themselves, and Elita 1 just tackles both Thrust and Ratbat, saying gladly, and bang! I feel like I haven't said bang in a while, so she makes quick work of those two and joins up with Cliffjumper, asking him if he knows how the well of all sparks work, which he doesn't, and I don't, and you don't. So we see them enter the room, and the room essentially starts to transform in front of them. And we have this beautiful page here of the well of sparks glowing and turning on, which then we see Cliff loading the spark canister into the computer. And this whole like well and screen here is very Teletran 1 like. That's why I said computer, because it's like a computer screen. But it says begin creation event, which Cliff says here goes everything, and presses the button and loads the canister. And we skip to the next page of Starscream's brigade. Yeah, the POV switches a lot this issue, but I like it. I like the pace. And we see Starscream and Astrotrain and Bruticus just causing mayhem on Seattle, destroying buildings, and we see Soundwave and his team arrive, and we see Starscream ask Soundwave if he really thinks that he has what it takes to defeat him, which Soundwave responds saying actually yes, he does believe he has what it takes. And Starscream tells him to get real and that his team of runaways will always, but before he can finish that sentence, we see Astrotrain and Starscream and Bruticus just get the most fattest uppercut from Devastator, and we see Team Prime arrive on the scene, and we see Trailbreaker asking if the Decepticons have no mercy, which Optimus says the most badass thing ever, and says, my Autobots, there's only one thing to do, prepare yourselves, as he loads his ion blaster and they charge in, and Optimus says save as many humans as you can, and we just see this amazing 3 panels of the Goat Jazz saving humans, and Trailbreaker using his force field, and Prime lifting Bruticus's leg to save the humans, which is just, oh, it's so good. This is so good. And we see Prime tell this mom and kid to quickly get in so he can save them, and that's exactly what they do. And this kid asks, who the heck is he? And our favorite commander simply says, the name is Optimus Prime, and we are here to rescue you. And this is just, it's just so freaking good. As we see the Autobots be, well, Autobots. And it's just so cool. We just have this amazing part here of just them saving humans and saving as many as they can, as they are literally running away from the Combiner chaos. It's so well done. But we shift to Elita's group, and I think you guys are really going to like this. As the birth creation is starting, and Alita tells Cliff that the machine is asking for a secondary form to model, which Cliff says way ahead of you, and tells Blades to drop what he was asking Blades earlier if it was too heavy. And what that was Carly's van. And remember, her van went into the space bridge portal when Cliff was thrown into it back in issue 12. So that's cool that this is being done and the van is being reused here. And the machine reads, "Scanning complete." As in the next page, the well of sparks lights up violently, and we hear a voice saying they recognize Cliff, and corrects himself saying, "I recognize you from ages past." And Cliff says, "My new friend, tell me, what do the combined sparks of my clan call themselves?" And asks this bot, "What is your name?" Which we see in the last page, they say their name is Shredhead. And bang, we see Shredhead holding a golden sword, and this is just so freaking good, dude. This is just, this is so good, as this is Skybound's first original character for the Autobots, and that's how this issue ends, fellas. And what another great issue setting up for the finale. And not surprising for me, might be surprising for some that there was no cameo here from Megatron, but that makes sense considering that he will most likely make a small appearance next issue. Fellas, we are back with issue 18, and here it is, man, the finale of Volume 3, and what a nice, sweet one it is. I didn't want to waste your guys' time, so leave a like and sub, but this picks up with Cybertron of Alita 1's group, and more specifically Blue Streak's group, as they are getting overran by Decepticons and are completely surrounded, and we see Blue Streak and his Autobots get cornered by these Decepticons. And it's cool to see Hot Link here, I'm not gonna lie, but when they get ready to take down Blue Streak first, here comes Shredhead, just ripping and tearing his way into the battlefield. And as the Decepticons are confused, Shredhead asks the cons if they are ready to shred, and he just slices off the Seeker's arms, making it look easy, and makes his way to the last Seeker, and bang, just slices Hot Link right in half. It's so good. This page is awesome, dude. He looks crazy with the sword and shield. It's so freaking cool to see. But we see Blue Streak and the others are shocked by Shredhead's power, and Alita tells Blue Streak that they may have finally turned the tide. And dude, this is so good. Okay, I gotta control myself here because we aren't done here yet, but we shift to Magnus and RC, as the last time we saw them, we saw Magnus was in a rough spot, and the reason that is because Shockwave tortured and basically skinned the poor city commander alive for years and years. But we see RC and Magnus talking to each other, and especially Magnus saying how back then the days for the future seemed so bright, but now all he sees is unknown vastness of the dark, and that Shockwave ruined it all. And Magnus goes on to tell RC that it's too late for him, and Shockwave taught him the depths of what one Cybertronian can do to another. And when RC tells him that he shouldn't let the past dictate what happens in the present, Magnus brushes this off. And I love this scene here because we see Carly speak up, and we know that Carly has been through the ringer in this story. And that's basically what she says, as she tells Magnus that her and Spike both lost their dads and their home, and everything they know about the world is now gone. And that she may be a small human and they are big giant metal creatures with huge metal guns, but on the inside they are much more alike than they know, and that their shared pain is what brings them together, and tells Magnus that he isn't alone. And I absolutely love this part here, as it's shared trauma, and although they both have been through different things, it's the shared pain that's the same. And it's even more amazing for Carly, as we know she was struggling for a while, especially last volume. She had a hard time accepting of what was happening to her. And I mean, who wouldn't? Who doesn't blame her? I probably would have acted the same way she did for a while. But it's really cool that she's starting to heal from this. But we see in the next page, with Magnus start to agree with this and let it all out, we see the Joes interrupt this meeting, and Magnus starts to freak out, pulling out his gun and start blasting at everyone in his wooden fortress that he made. And Spike and Beachcomber scrambling to get to safety. We see RC tell Magnus to stop, but it's no use. We see this helicopter flash its light and start blasting at the Autobots and Magnus, and for a second, Magnus sees Shockwave's face, making him freak out even more, with Magnus heading the helicopter screaming, "He wants to enslave me," and Magnus is just having a full-on breakdown as the Joes start to swarm the Autobots more and more. It's basically bail time for them. As Beachcomber and Spike start to go and run away, RC tries to and gets Carly, but ultimately fails, and now the Joes have captured Ultra Magnus and Carly, and the Joes do say about Carly that she's out cold and hopefully she can give them some answers. And this is really interesting because I don't really know what the Joes are going to do with Ultra Magnus and Carly. But now the rescue team are now down 2 members, but we switch to Seattle. And if you're in Seattle right now, what are you doing, man, watching this? Get to safety, man. But we see Jazz and Wheeljack tell the swarm of humans to fall into safety as 2 literal combiners are fighting on top of them. And with the building starting to cave in and fall on them, our commander himself comes in and stops the building from falling on the humans, and we see Trailbreaker pop up a force field for the humans to go and get the safety. And we see Starscream, who is with Astrotrain, saying the city is his, and we see Bruticus start to get the upper hand in this fight, but we cut to Soundwave and Rumble, and Soundwave tells Rumble that he may only have 1 arm, but that's all you need. And Soundwave launches Rumble towards Starscream and Astrotrain, completely knocking out one of Astrotrain's wings, sending him crashing down, and Starscream calling out to Bruticus, and Bruticus follows, calling Starscream a fearless leader. But we see Devastator to tell Bruticus to worry for himself and not Starscream, as we see Bruticus go 10 to Starscream, but here comes Devastator RKOing Bruticus, saying there can only be 1 combiner, and that combiner's name is Devastator, and watch out, Devastator RKO. Oh, it's so good. This looks so freaking crazy, dude. I can't. But we see Devastator just completely RKOing Bruticus, sending the both of them down to the floor, which sends out a huge explosion, essentially creating the biggest earthquake ever recorded. But fellas, I need to control myself here, as the next part of this story is so freaking good. So, we get a round 2 of Starscream versus Soundwave, with Starscream yelling out saying why can't anything go his way, and we see Soundwave knock Starscream across the rooftop, telling him that the reason why anything can't go his way is because he is stupid, and is guided by fear, hate, and selfishness. And with a gun pointed at Starscream's head, Soundwave makes the comment saying, "What a pathetic end for you," and Starscream hears the word pathetic. Being filled with rage, knocks the gun out of Soundwave's hand, headbutts him, and rips off Soundwave's chest, saying, "Look who is talking," and says, "At least I'm not the one obsessed with their tape collection," grabbing Ravage. But suddenly, a voice appears, calling out to Starscream and Soundwave, saying 1 word, and that is enough, as freaking Megatron is back! He is here officially in Seattle. With Starscream asking how is he alive, he tells Starscream to be silent, and Megatron walks up to Ravage and brings him back to life with his own spark, and pets Ravage and says, "What a good soldier you are, and what a faithful servant your father is." And we see Soundwave bow as the freaking OG is back in town, and this is so good, fellas. Oh, it's so good. But we see Starscream tell Astrotrain to take him away and to do it quickly. But Astrotrain sees Megatron, sees the one who took everything from him, sees the one who locked him up in the Nemesis for years, and tells Starscream no. And we see Megatron tell Soundwave to get up and that there's much work to be done. And we cut to Team Prime, who sees that the Tyrant Leader is back, and Optimus has a look of fear and tells the Autobots to retreat as Megatron is back and ready for vengeance. And that's how this issue ends, fellas. And wow, I can't believe it. I freaking called it. I just had a feeling that he would show up to end this conflict, and what a fitting way to do it. Showing up, stopping the conflict between Starscream and Soundwave, stopping the Decepticon Civil War, putting order back in his men. It's so freaking good. I have no clue what's gonna happen with Starscream. Fellas, I don't know. I think Starscream might be cooked. I don't know what's gonna happen. I know definitely Astrotrain wants to run one-on-one with Megatron, which will be really awesome to see next volume, because I know that's gonna happen, and I don't think it's gonna end well for Astrotrain. But wow, I really did enjoy this volume. Probably not as much as Volume 2, but Volume 2 just had such a crazy ending. But man, this volume had its highs, and I really liked how we got to see Starscream's origin, and then to see him do the whole Starscream Brigade arc. like how he did back in the G1 cartoon with the Combaticons. I also really like that we saw G.I. Joe more in this volume, like with Cobra at the beginning, with Starscream being attached to a HISS tank, and also this issue with the Joes hunting down Magnus. Overall, I really enjoyed this volume, and I can't wait for the next issue diving into Megatron's origins, because I know damn well Warren Johnson is going to cook with those origins, just like how he did with Starscream's origins, and I just want to see more Megatron. It's kind of crazy that this is completely random, by the way. I'm just kind of ranting here. I actually can't believe how much more I like G1 Megatron, and it's literally thanks to this story. Like, I never really cared for G1 Megatron. When it came to G1, I kind of liked Galvatron more because he just looked more cool. I know he wasn't always mentally stable, but wow. I am a big fan of this version of Megatron, and I cannot wait to fight with him and Optimus Prime in this story, which you guys know and I know we are going to get next volume, as next volume is going to be all about Megatron's origins for the first 2 issues, I believe, and then after that we're going to get, I believe, 4 issues, so it'll be 6 total. 2 of the origins and 4 being Megatron setting up his plan, which, whew, I just know that fight's gonna be crazy with Optimus. Oh man, I would love to know your guys' thoughts on this issue, and actually comment down below your guys' thoughts on this whole volume. I will be reading all the comments and talking with you guys about it because I really enjoyed it, and as always, I hope you guys all have a good one, and be on the lookout for Teletran tapes for us discussing this issue more in depth. But hope you guys all have a good one. I'll see you guys in the next one. Later.